You can't be for the mob on January 6th and for the officers. You can't. And it's not funny, because you're a threat to democracy.
But you don't hear him talking about the Antifa and Black Lives Matter riots that burned cities across this country.
This is somebody who goes to the Ritz-Carlton in Cancun. Do you really think he cares about inflation and about working families? When his entire career he spent his time trying to cut taxes for the rich and not looking out for working folks.
Kamala Harris and Congressman Allred, they came in and they went on a spending binge. They spent trillions of dollars we didn't have. They borrowed trillions of dollars from China that we didn't have, and they ran the printing presses. And I and many others said, if you do this, you're going to drive up inflation. And they didn't care.
For 60 jam-packed minutes, incumbent Ted Cruz and challenger Colin Allred went toe-to-toe on a Dallas debate stage. The Democratic congressman came into this lone face-to-face meeting needing a stellar outing to close a 3 to 4 point gap against the two-term incumbent. After the dust settled, we asked Rice political analyst Mark Jones if Allred succeeded.
He had a credible performance. I think he went blow to blow with Cruz. But at the end of the day, the narrative coming out of the debate is it's not a game changer.
Panel, that's one expert assessment. What I want is yours, Holly Hansen.
Well, look, love him or hate him, Ted Cruz is really good on the debate stage, and he's shown, as he always does. That's part of the reason that he won the Texas nomination in 2016 for president, because he had done so well in the debate. In this debate, of course, you know, both sides are claiming victory, but when you look at how they responded to the wedge issues, abortion for the Democrats and the transgender issue for Republicans, you see both of them were a little bit evasive, but on the one hand, whereas Ted Cruz was able to say, I'm not responsible for the state's laws, I'm in Congress, I work on federal laws, Allred had to be a little bit fuddled on his answer on the issue of biological males competing in girls' sports. He did vote against a bill that would protect girls' sports, and he co-sponsored the Transgender Bill of Rights that doesn't poll well with the moderates and independent voters, and we saw Ted Cruz come up a bit in the polls this week.
Paul Castro, the Cruz campaign has spent a lot of money on the transgender ads, and yet the abortion issue seems to be one that is bigger in this race, affects more people. What was your take watching what unfolded in Dallas?
So we live in Texas, and Texas's sports is governed by the UIL. As a former high school principal, I can tell you there will not be a day in my lifetime where a transgender student will play across the aisle in terms of what their birth gender is. So that's just not going to happen. And I find it odd that that's where Cruz's last 4 ads have all focused on is transgender. That's just not going to happen. It's a fear-based appeal. Whereas on the other side, Kate Cox and others, you can point to exact people who've been impacted by the abortion ban. And those are things that I think most Texans care about more, but this fear thing is definitely driving voters.
Marcus Davis.
Yes.
Colin Allred mentioned Ted Cruz's evacuation to Cancun 4, I think 5 times. Is that something that voters should remember?
Yes, I mean they should. I'm not saying that they would. The question is whether or not it's going to move the needle. I doubt it. You know, our partisan politics is so heavy right now. You know, everybody's rolled up their sleeves and you know, tightened their belts and dug the ditches, and they're ready for war. But yes, it should matter, because that's exactly what he did. He evacuated the city and did not stay to protect or be with amongst his citizens. Just like, you know, Ted Cruz, he did a great job on the debate stage. He looked strong. I just don't know where that strong guy was when Donald Trump talked so viciously about his wife and about his father. He whimpered down. I don't understand how people could equate January 6th, which was an attempt to overthrow the government and to hang the vice president of the United States, to protests in the streets after police brutality resulted in the death of a human being. That's not the same.
All right, Mark Jones says any Democrat to win statewide is going to need at least 2/3 of the Latino vote. His numbers are showing that Latinos are falling way short of that for Allred. April, any idea why?
Honestly speaking, a lot of people are not very well versed on this UIL protocols, right? So they are in fear that these types of policies that Colin Allred voted for are going to be happening in their schools. They don't want boys and girls locker rooms. It's just very simple. We don't want boys in bathrooms. However, I think that people are becoming more aware, and we know that abortion is a state law, not on a federal level, right? So what does Ted Cruz really have to do with this abortion issue? That should be a Governor Abbott situation.
All right, Chris Tritico, I saved you for last. You have covered, watched, observed, participated in lots of Senate races in the state. Democrats haven't won since 1994 statewide.
Wow.
And the problem with that is exactly what we just heard right there, is that the Democrats have ignored the Latino vote and let this issue of abortion go the wrong way. Instead of talking about the transgender vote the way it should be talked about and informing their public, they've allowed the Republicans to beat them by about the head and shoulders with it, and instead of informing the public that the abortion issue is a national issue because Donald Trump appointed these Supreme Court justices and allowed the abortion Roe versus Wade to be overturned. That's why we're in this position we're in, and that's why you're having this issue the way it is, and that's why Texas is in the position it's in. That's why we're here, and they've let the Latino vote go away.